Welcome to PWS United, a podcast for the Prader-Willi syndrome community, brought to you by PWSA USA. This podcast gives the latest news in research, advocacy, and family support by bringing together staff, volunteers, PWS treatment specialists, biotech and pharmaceutical representatives, caregivers, family members, and individuals with PWS. Our goal is to share education, awareness, and resources with those living with PWS and their supporters. Join us in our mission to enhance the quality of life and empower those affected by Prader-Willi syndrome.
In honor of National Family Caregiver Month, we wanted to have another conversation about self-care. And to do this, we brought on Emily Felt, an amazing PWS mom and mindfulness teacher, friend, and very knowledgeable about self-care and what that looks like for her and how to have the conversation on what it looks like for everybody else or what it could look like. So Emily, thank you for being here.
Thank you, Annie, for having me. It's really an honor. I never missed the chance to address the PWS community. So just to give a little information about me, my name is Emily Felt. I have a 12-year-old daughter with PWS named Olivia. I also have a 16-year-old son named Adria. I'm based in California. I'm a frequent traveler. People who know me know that I go all over the place. I've been involved with PWS since just after my daughter Ollie was diagnosed with PWS. I, of course, as all of us, was shocked, somewhat traumatized, and caught in that space between trying to know more and trying to avoid knowing more. And my sister called PWSA actually and got one of the staff members to call me and talk to me. And then I went on the website, learned more, and connected with Lisa Graziano. She was one of my first contacts in the community, and I love and appreciate and support the community. So I've been involved off and on over the years, sometimes more than others. I've worked as a parent mentor, usually with families that are either Spanish speaking, because I'm fluent in Spanish, or people that have just gotten their diagnosis or have a small child. And then I also I volunteer with a communications support committee. So that's a little bit about me.
All right. Well, thank you. So we are here with Carrie as well. And the three of us are going to talk about self-care for caregivers. Emily, can you start us off by just kind of talking about some of the ways that parents and caregivers perhaps experience more stress and what that can do to us?
Just to preface, before I begin, I want to share with everyone that I really can only speak to my personal experience. Everyone's lives look very different, and I'm well aware of that. I talk about my own journey with having a child with PWS and also my experience as a coach and as a parent mentor. And I have gone through some coaching training relating to self-care. So I usually try to bring in different strategies from the field known as positive psychology, which is just the study of human happiness and how we can bring in specific skills to create more happiness on this journey we call life. So one of the first things I just want to share with everyone is we do really in this PWS community face very unique challenges. We often have to go through things that other parents don't have to go through. That's not to say that every parent doesn't have their own version of caregiver stress, etc. But I think it's important for us to recognize that we have unique challenges, and it really affects our ability to care for ourselves as well as care for our children and care for our other family members and just find balance in our lives. So I myself have faced burnout probably 3 or 4 major times since having my daughter 12 years ago. And sometimes the way that caregiver stress or burnout shows up is just through our physical symptoms, such as maybe we're not sleeping well. We might notice that we're not engaging as much in things that we enjoy. Often we might feel like a bit of muddled mind or memory issues. And one of the big ones for me is just finding myself low on patience or snapping at people, feeling frustration. And when that kind of sets in early in the day, it often means that I need to take a step back and see what I can do for myself before I help other people. I also want to share that it's completely natural and normal for us to get burned out sometimes. Mm-hmm. So if anyone in the community does find themselves getting burned out, it's actually good because it's an opportunity to take a step back and learn some new skills for the toolbox and function in a more balanced way.
I love, Emily, that you kind of gave some definition around what caregiver burnout might look like, because I think we hear that term often, and I'm sure many parents feel a lot of those things, but maybe don't fully recognize in those specific moments, like, oh, this is what's happening to me. So that for me personally, too, gave a lot of good context around, signs to look for. And that's kind of the first step, right? We have to recognize that in ourselves and then make the choice and decision to, find the next step of how am I going to help myself get out of this, or just find, some
Yeah.
respite anywhere. So
Yeah, it's so important. And I just want to share my story. I've been burned out a few different times, and I remember a couple of times I didn't even realize what was going on. I remember one time I was quite burned out, and I went to my family doctor just to say, "Hey, my memory is not working very well." And as part of the intake process, she ran me through the depression screening, and somehow I like checked almost all of the boxes. And I had no idea that I was feeling down or having all of those symptoms. So that was kind of a wake up call for me to be honest with myself about how much stuff I had on my plate. I did address it. And luckily, I want to reassure anyone who has had that happen, because it doesn't always take a long time to get back on track. Sometimes you can get back on track in a month or two of just taking good care of yourself and being aware of what's happening.
right.
If you start to really pay attention to the signs and get to know what those signs are, that's definitely something that I'm learning. And I'm so familiar with that. Just like I have no more patience. I've that feeling I have nothing left to give. And so that's when I can be clear with my husband. Like I don't have enough time. Like I need to go out. And that may just be going out dancing with some girlfriends at night or something, or whatever, just something. Give me a break. I've got nothing left.
Got
So
nothing.
I got nothing. So yeah, I think once you really start to notice those signs and what that looks like in yourself, and you can start to take those steps, hopefully before you get to that major burnout.
Yeah, I was
What?
just going
Oh,
to say, Annie, those we can, if we get used to looking at what it looks like for us, then it's great because we can actually prevent it, and we don't have to get to the point where we have nothing left to give to ask for help or get more support, right? The idea is to be able to build skills, know ourselves better, and be able to catch ourselves when we're maybe like 75% at our
Right.
capacity instead of 99% and ready to, you know,
Yeah. So
just
getting to the
throw in
point
the
of
towel.
I have nothing left to give, like that's not just a sign. That's like we want to stop it before we get there. Maybe.
I would say probably yes. I would say probably yes. One of the frameworks that I've worked with in my coaching is this circle of self awareness, self compassion, and self care. And it's very important to remember that often we don't care for ourselves because we're not really aware of what's going on. And so our first step is to try and have some self awareness around how we're feeling and specifically how we're reacting to our different emotions. And then from there, we practice giving ourselves self-compassion because, we're not having these things happen because we're bad people or we don't have the skills. It happens because we're human and we're in very difficult situations. And then once we recognize that, we often find that we can figure out what steps we need to take care of ourselves and what do we actually need. And then from that point, I think we start building our skill set.
absolutely. What, Emily, advice, and Annie too, advice would you have for those parents though who don't have that partner in their life that they can say, I'm at 0% today, I need you to step in? Because there's a lot of people who are single parents in our community. So what advice would you give to them when they're kind of hitting that point as well?
Well, I just also want to say that sometimes, it could be that sometimes one partner is much more capable than the other as well. So
Yeah.
some people might have a partner, but their partner might already be at their limit, or their partner might not have the skills to support them in the time when they need. So I can say for me personally, some of the best things that I've done for myself have been, in investing in an ongoing therapist or an ongoing coach or an ongoing support group, or the sessions that Annie has offered around journaling, any
Mhm.
sort of activity like that that you find renews your energy can be really helpful. And I would say for those who feel like they don't have an immediate support, to try and incorporate those things just on a routine basis into your life, and not to wait until you're at your, I'm done situation,
Yeah.
but just to have it be a part of your weekly or biweekly routine, incorporated along the way. Is it's true that many people in our community, I would say most people in our community, don't have sufficient support to navigate all of the things that we have to navigate. And I've had many periods of that myself as well.
Yeah, I appreciate that you clarified that, Emily, because yeah, there's people all over the world in relationships, and that doesn't mean that like it's an equal. Like, everybody's
Yeah.
putting the same amount in. And I would say, because my husband is a crab fisherman, so like there's a couple months of the year where he's pretty unavailable. And so, I'm not a single parent, but I do have,
Mhm.
with various circumstances, there are times where I am the only parent present and available. And for me, that's when it's really important to make sure that I'm getting up a little earlier and I'm sitting with my journal or I'm drinking coffee and reading a book, whatever that looks like, just to make sure that I start. For me, it's at the starts. For some people, it's the end of the day, just to have that time where you're not taking care of somebody else. You're not doing something with anybody else. And something that I love to do that Emily and I have done before, get together with another parent who has a kid and sit them in front of a movie if you can, while you sit by the fire and drink a bottle of wine and talk or whatever. Like,
Sounds nice.
Emily and I have had some nice campfire times, and that's when you can reach out to the broader community and have your friends that you can be at their place, your kid is safe, or they can come to yours. And so like maybe you're not getting to go out or having this physical separation, but you do have that connection with another parent or another adult. That's
Right.
for me, that's important.
I will say too, if people need help finding those people in their area or just looking to connect with other families in general, even if it's someone, not necessarily close in proximity living to you, you can contact PWSA and we can help, locate some parent mentors in the area or, other volunteers who would love to also connect. We have so many people available as that other person on the other end that would love to start making those connections with families out there. So if you're looking for that, if you're listening and looking for something like that, please contact us. We would love to get you connected. So that's a great advice there, Annie. I think that's so important. I can't imagine not having community near you who understands and can kind of go back and forth about, this is what I'm experiencing. Oh my gosh, me too. And just find that connection. So we are here to help with that as the basis of what I was trying to say.
That's so true, Carrie. I just want to jump in here for a second because, first of all, I want to cheer you on about offering PWSA as a resource. I've found it to be such a wonderful resource. And honestly, I have friends that have children with other rare diseases. And I will say that not most rare diseases do not have this type of supportive community. So people should for sure reach out and just take advantage of that. But what I was wanting to share about community was that I know a lot of people in our community, we can sometimes have a really hard time finding a supportive community because of our kids' challenges. And it's really important to have a strong community around you of people that love you, that love your child, that are open-minded about like what get-togethers might look like and how you might get called away or what are some of the wacky things that might happen. And so the tip that I wanted to offer to people is to kind of apply their awareness skills to the social situations and settings where you take part in. You kind of have to pick and choose and find the right group of people where you can be who you are and you can bring your child into that setting and you can find love and support. And sometimes it doesn't happen right away. I know this from my own experience. It took us a number of years to actually find a group of families, and many of them have children, and to find that group of families that were kind of in a relaxed situation with my daughter around and could handle the situation and decided that they kind of loved us and her unconditionally and wanted to be supportive for us. It took a while to find that. So if you haven't found it yet, just keep trying and really notice when something goes well, when your child's enjoying themselves, when you feel supported, and when you find a little bit of that, try and explore how you can get more of it. What can you do to get more of that in your life? And obviously, any social setting comes with its struggles, and it's often worth trying to work through those to get to a point where everyone feels safe.
Right. I will say too, if people have the means to come to one of our in-person events, that those are great opportunities to connect, with many families and learn about all the different age ranges and find various different connections to resources like different specialists. And there's just so many great opportunities there. But I would also say that, we are a virtual office, so we're always connecting virtually online in various ways. And one of the most prevalent ways I've heard people kind of take this first step in getting connected is joining the advocacy committee at PWSA. And I cannot tell you in the last couple of years how many people have said in various interviews or just, meeting them for the first time in DC or in some fashion like that, that they said connecting it as an advocate or becoming an advocate, utilizing PWSA's advocacy committee is how I've met my community. And now I really feel like I have a voice and I have an opportunity to do something for my child and myself that I did not know that I necessarily needed or wanted at the time, but now I can't imagine not. So that's just, again, a kind of an example of a way if people are listening and want to get involved. The advocacy committee is a great first step if anyone's looking for something like that. So Dorothy is always, our rah-rah, you got it, girl or guy person. So she will help you out.
She will. Yeah, she's amazing. I really, really like her. And I really appreciate that PWSA offers advocacy opportunities for parents and for caregivers, because it's such a great way to channel some of the feelings of what can I do or feeling hopeless into something that actually is really important. And I also wanted to reiterate, within the PWS community, there are so many families and friendships that can potentially be developed. I mean, I've been supported numerous times by other PWS families. I've become friends with Annie. I think both of us have gained a lot from sharing the stories of what we're going through with each other. And so I think just maintaining strong friendships is like a really important thing for self-care, and especially for caregivers. Sometimes it's one of the first things that falls off our list of stuff to do is, as a caregiver, our own friendships, our own interests, our own dance party with girlfriends, as Annie said. Those type of things tend to be the things that we squeeze out because, we still have to eat, we still have to sleep, and we have a lot on our plate. And I think it's important to remember that those things can be so energizing, and they're there to support us. Sometimes we're going to need it more than others, but we got to keep those things going.
Yeah. And sometimes that's a FaceTime video or whatever. I mean, Emily and I don't live, we are like 5 hours apart, so we don't see each other that often, but we do have a fairly regular check-in with each other. And sometimes that's a 20-minute FaceTime or whatever. And it really does a lot to help you feel connected. And, I have friends that are local that are parents of kids with disabilities, with different disabilities. And, we're friends, like we don't socialize necessarily outside of we are each other's people to meet with every few months, have coffee, and just kind of we just kind of hash out all of the stuff from our disability community, what's been happening in that aspect of our lives. And I think that's interesting. I love them dearly, but that's the purpose that we serve for each other, is to help each other, support each other in those ways. And so if you don't have any PWS families around you, maybe you have some other families that can relate, that you can say, oh girl, I got my IUP today, and they're like, good luck, sorry, I got
Love the passion and the truth, the honesty. I mean, that is what we're talking about, right?
Yeah. I mean, there's a mom that works at this school, and our older daughters were friends, but she adopted a baby, 13 or was 17 now, 17 years ago, who has a very rare disorder. And we see each other in passing in the morning, and it's, like 5 minutes, and it's just all directly related to our children and the disability world. And it's just this intense 5 minutes, and then we hug, and then we walk off, and then it's like, oh, okay, there are other people out here that I can relate to. I'm not the only one doing this.
Yeah, there are a lot of other people, I think, to relate to. It's partly that we live in a time in a society where we don't often express these things openly, and we need spaces and people with whom we know that we can be honest. I think that's really important.
So can we get into this idea of talking about maybe meditation and mindfulness and what that looks like, and what, I think I said this in our email, but I don't know that everybody's on board with that. Like Emily, I feel like you and I, and probably Carrie too, are like, oh yeah, those are really important aspects of life. But
My husband and I meditate every day. We can't not.
oh my
Oh,
God,
yeah.
I love it.
Oh, yeah. I'm
I'd love
obsessed.
to try to meditate every day. It doesn't always happen. No, you're right. I am committed to meditation. Meditation isn't always for everyone. So I I would say there's not a whole lot of difference between meditation and something else, which is just known as finding a little bit of quiet and stillness and a space to do some self-reflection. Because I found that one of the most important things in being a caregiver that, still has bandwidth and has energy is to find places where you can kind of become aware of your emotions and process them. And meditation actually helps us get into a space where we can do that more. It doesn't always come during the time that we're meditating. Sometimes you meditate for your 15 minutes and you're just kind of finding more stillness, even if there's constantly thoughts going here and there. But then at another time, you are a little more open and you find yourself noticing something, becoming aware of something, processing something. So even for people who either don't want to meditate or anything like that, I would say find whatever it looks like for you when you have a moment where you become aware of how you're doing, how you're feeling. And generally, we live such, distracted, information-filled lives that we have to make a quiet space for that. I think advanced practitioners have an amazing ability to go through the day and filter out a lot of those distractions. But for the majority of people, myself included, we generally have to find a little bit of quiet. So if we don't call it meditation, we can just call it, coming to center or 5 minutes of quiet or, walking down the bike path. Whatever it is, it could be meditative. It doesn't have to be meditation per se.
Right. Yeah, I am not someone who meditates well. If in the act, like in that traditional image, of sitting quietly and sitting still, because that's when my anxiety just like flares up. Is your
Bubbles
heart
up.
beating okay? Like, wait, how long should you be taking a breath? But I love gardening, and gardening without listening to a podcast or without having music, and just being in the garden with just whatever sounds are going on. That I find that works for me. So yeah, I appreciate that. Like whatever that looks like, it doesn't have to be this image of you sitting in lotus or whatever it's called.
Most of us can't even get into lotus position. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
It's a really good point. I think it's become somewhat cliche to think in these days that we can just always feel better if we just start meditating, right? And in reality, it's a little more complicated like that. I like it because it's really helped me. But I think if I didn't meditate again, I'd still be okay because there's 100 other ways to get the same benefits as doing meditation. You just have to know what works for you and have to know how you yourself and your nervous system calm down. And if you can do that, then you really don't need to meditate, in my opinion.
I
Very true.
found that mine really comes with walking. I'm like an avid walker. I walk usually 3 times a day, but I'm fortunate to have the time to do that. So not to say that everyone needs to do that, but even, just like a quick, walk through the neighborhood a bit, or if you have a treadmill at home, just a quick 5-10 minutes. And I put on, my preferred app for meditation, and there's different settings or different focuses that I can select. So if I'm feeling like I need some gratitude that day, or if I feel like I need some calming that day, I'll select kind of my mood. And walking kind of that rhythmic motion, I would say, really helps me find that centeredness in the moment. And then I can kind of couple that with what is being said in my ears and not have my mind go kind of on a tangent like Annie experiences. So I'm also not a sit still meditator, but I have found a lot of help in just kind of that, again, rhythmic movement of walking with it. And it has really drastically made me a calmer, more thoughtful, thought-provoked person, I would say, to do that consistently in my life. So I highly recommend it for people considering it or who haven't done it yet, even just to try it for, a week or a few times in a month, and see how it ultimately could affect you a little bit more long term.
I love walking as well, Carrie. And I really appreciate what you said about sometimes you have to do these things regularly to start noticing the benefits. A lot of these aren't like, it's not as effective as maybe, relaxin or some medication you can just take and you kind of
Right.
instantly feel more relaxed. These are like healthy practices to incorporate over the long term. So sometimes people have to be, you can't often be in total burnout and implement some of these things. There's different different tools you need for different levels of stress, exhaustion, and burnout. And one thing that I have learned myself, specifically over the past 2 years, is that it's really important to incorporate self-advocacy into that framework of self-awareness, self-compassion, self-care. Because so often we advocate a ton for our kids, but we don't apply that to advocating for ourselves. And in the PWS community, we have very specific challenges. I mean, I've had people to say to me in the past, "Oh, you're feeling burnout. Well, why don't you get up an hour earlier than your children and just have that quiet space?" And I've never been able to do that. My daughter wakes up reliably within 5 minutes, whatever time I get up. I can't have my quiet space in the morning. So I think it's really important that we remind people of that there's this inner piece in terms of self-awareness, but the outer actions that we need to take through self-advocacy can help us set up like a system of supports that can support us externally. And sometimes we have to have a lot of energy to put those things in place. But getting respite care, getting financial support from whatever government systems we are eligible for, investing in ourselves in terms of, babysitting if your child has the ability to be with someone external. Investing in our own self-care in that way can be really helpful, because then we suddenly find like, oh, I can go on a walk by myself because now I have the external supports that make that a possibility. And if it's just me and my child all the time, then I suddenly don't have those possibilities. So self-advocacy is so important. And I think it's a piece of the puzzle that sometimes we miss, because even though we can advocate for our children, we don't often do the same thing for our own needs.
That was well said.
Yes.
I've
Such an
learned it.
important point.
I've learned it very personally in the past couple of years. I was a person who's very avoided to conflict, good advocate for my daughter, not a very good advocate for me. And I'm learning through experience that if I really want to take good care of myself, which I deserve to be cared for, I deserve to be happy too, that I have to take those steps to self-advocate, even if it's uncomfortable.
I love that you mentioned too, seeking out others to help care for your loved one. I think it's really hard for this community, and it's so understandable. There's so many unique needs, like you've mentioned. But another volunteer in our communications team mentioned that she has kind of a great system for this. And a lot of it, I think, too, is kind of allowing that person to just come into your house, into your life, and just being okay with it in the first place. But she suggested having paperwork and documents for this babysitter that comes in, all about her child. It's, a one-pager on what they like, what their needs are in terms of the syndrome, important emergency contact information, PWSA's crisis line information, things like that. And then a pamphlet on PWS and allowing them to learn about it. And I think sending that ahead of time as well, so that they can get an understanding. So there's ideas that are out there that you could, set up and make that happen. Thought that she had just a great one. Annie, is there any other stuff that I'm missing from that? I know you were.
Well, so I just want to
well.
put a little plug out that we are working on making a document like that to share with people, like an easy fill-in guide, just to help people create their own folder. And then Lisa Graziano, who Emily mentioned earlier, will be doing a training for babysitters and respite workers in the next few weeks. I'll have those dates in the show notes and registration for that. So hopefully we are creating kind of a package or a toolkit that makes it easier for people to get that respite care and practice that self-advocacy that Emily's talking about. I need help with it. I know that. I'm a bit of a
sure
martyr.
You're not alone, Annie.
It can't be understated the challenges that our community face with finding other people to help out. And that's, I think, also just something that most of the general population of other parents they don't really understand. They're not going to see that aspect of our lives. But it can be very, very hard for people in our community to find people that are really capable of coming in and taking things off their plate and lightening the load and being on a one-on-one basis with their child in a safe way. And I found often, often it's more the problem of the person coming in that doesn't just have the skills than even that my child's doing anything out of the ordinary. But, to the extent that you can at least try to find those resources and whatever possibilities there are, see if you can incorporate it in some creative way that at least gives you a bit of a break. Sometimes having someone there while you're there as well that can do a puzzle with your child. That way you can do something else that you need to do, even if you're both in the same house. I mean, I'm just brainstorming right now, but I want to say that sometimes we think, oh, that won't work for me, when it might not, but there might be some intermediate creative alternative that could work. So if we can get ourselves out of the low trough, right? If we're really feeling burned out, start building our energy back up, we start getting energy to think about some of these things.
I will say too, really quick on the subject here a bit, that for if anyone out there listening is not, directly a caregiver, is either a sibling of a caregiver or a parent of a caregiver, anyone like that, to take some time to do some research on your own. It's honestly something that personally we've been doing. We have a close family member who was diagnosed with autism, and he's still very young. So we're trying to learn so that we can be an additional, helper for the parents and be able to take some of that off of their plate. If they want to go enjoy a night out, we can take their child so that we can, offer that as a family member and allow them to have that space for themselves. And I think too, this job really has made that so apparent to me too, as well. Just knowing the importance of helping your family, being that additional family member to offer them some respite. Anyone out there, again, please take some time as well to learn about it and get to know the loved one and their needs, and maybe step in if that's an opportunity for you, because that would be a huge help.
That's great advice. That's really great advice, Carrie. I would also encourage people to sometimes, you ask somebody what they need and they don't know, or they may not reach out. So don't hesitate to think of something that you can do and just do it, or make arrangements, or, step in some way sometimes before it even being asked can be really helpful for people, because it takes a lot of energy just for people to recognize what they need and how someone else might be able to help. Sometimes that's a whole process in itself of just figuring out how you can be helped. Takes a certain level of self-awareness, reflection, and then organization, and just to have people step in and be kind and be helpful and do something out of the blue can be really nice.
Yeah.
I was thinking about after Freya was born, she was a cesarean, unexpected. And my best friend was at the store. I was home by now and people were bringing us food. And my midwife, she saw my friend at the store and she said, look, it is not enough to bring her food. You take the food, you put it in the microwave, you warm it up and you take it to her, and then you take the baby. Otherwise, she's not going to eat it. Yeah. So I love that message, Carrie, to the family members and the friends of the caregivers. Like, find ways that you can step in, because it's hard to ask for help for a lot of people. And Emily, to your point, sometimes we just don't even know where to begin. Yeah, if you can help us figure that out.
Take that first step yourself, right?
Yeah. Can we maybe kind of shift gears a little bit? But I love your food gratitude so much. And I think that it can really do a lot for people, because as we know, food is such a massive part of this, and it really changes and affects our relationship to food. And that can have, a series of triggers and all of that stuff. So can you talk to us a little bit about your food gratitude?
Well, there's two different things that I think I'd love to say about gratitude. One of them is that gratitude is a great intervention and strategy for when we feel at our worst. They've researched this, in the field of neurology, and they know that there are changes that happen in your brain when you start thinking about things you're grateful for, or write down a list of things that happened during the day that were good and what your role might have been in that. Even if there's something like someone did something nice for me and I smiled in return. I mean, things literally at that level, when you do something specifically to start thinking about gratitude, feeling gratitude, or even witnessing other people being thankful, it actually shifts your brain chemistry for that moment. And when you practice it over time, you can build on that, and it actually changes your disposition, changes, your emotions. It can change your life with ongoing and repeated practice. So one thing I always do if I'm feeling really down and out is I just start writing gratitude lists in the morning and at night. It really helps me get through the day. Back in May, I broke my knee and I couldn't walk for several weeks, and I still had my daughter there and needed to do all the things that she needs to do. And I also needed to not walk. And I felt really low. And so I reverted back to my strategy of writing gratitude lists and just trying to focus on each day. What were the good parts? What did the good parts look like for me? So, Annie, you asked about the food gratitude. Food is such a hard situation for us because there's so much stress and so much anxiety around it. It affects the whole family. It affects our social relationships. And my idea about incorporating gratitude into this is just to use some of those neurological responses in our families around food to create kind of that upward spiral of feeling more positive about it. So it has to look different for each family based on what, the person with PWS, what works for them, how they're capable of engaging with food, and how helpful it can be to, focus on this type of thing during a meal or during dinner. But I've really found it to be helpful in my family and with my extended family if we do gratitude activities when we have food present at the table, or if we start to go down a road of, I want more, but you can't have it, or I want ice cream for dessert, it's not ice cream day type of situation, we can reroute almost our brains by engaging in a gratitude activity. And that can look really different and really simple. For example, it can be everyone at the table sharing something that they're grateful for. It can be focused on something that happened that day. It can be focused on something that you want for the future. It can be focused on something you appreciate about someone else at the table. You can take a lot of different forms, but I find that it helps resolve some of the stress and makes things more positive. Obviously, it's not going to you're not going to make our situations different in the sense that we still have to deal with PWS and we still have food issues. And that's a part of our life that we have to manage, but we can manage it in a positive way, and we can have it be less difficult. So I always try to encourage people to at least give it a try and just be flexible and explore it and see how it goes. And I'm very convinced that if you give these things a try and really reflect on how it's going, you wind up finding what works for you, learning about yourself, and you can have a positive and joyful life in the context of PWS. We know this because we now have stories in our community in which this is happening and we see it going on. When Ollie was born, we lived in Barcelona, Spain. And I remember Googling and trying to find stories from the perspective of people with PWS. And I told my sister, I felt so depressed because I just didn't find almost anything. I couldn't hear from anyone with this syndrome, what their life was like. And I was wondering what my daughter's life was going to be like. And now she's 12, and we have young people in our community who are sharing their own stories. And for me, that's so inspirational, even though each of us has a different situation and my daughter's future may look different. I think we've advanced so far, and I credit that to all the people in our community who have found the good things and found things that work and been willing to share and support others.
Absolutely. I think that word hope has really magnified in the last several years. And that's why people see it at PWSA so much, because we, want to focus on the hope and the hopeful stories.
No, the hope is we're
The
not
hope
going
is
to put
there.
this in, but the hope was a major change from when my daughter was born, and PWSA had a different tagline. And I think that, United in Hope is very helpful because there is a lot of hope. There's a lot of hope for our children, and there's a lot of hope for people living with PWS. We don't always see it. We don't always feel that way, but it's there.
I wanted to say on the topic of gratitude, I find it really helpful to include nature in the part of the gratitude, because it's really what's the word I'm looking for? Like it's there, like,
It's like a constant.
it's
Yeah.
that's the word. It's a constant. And so for me, one of my favorite ones, I mean, I had a really bad morning last week and walked out of the gym, got there when it was dark, walked out of the gym and the sun was rising. And I just said, oh, look, the sun is rising again. I am grateful for the sun rising. And like, that really shifted things. And so I think there's something about that constant of nature that can be really helpful.
I find that too.
Yes.
I have to say, I find myself really nourished by sunrises, sunsets, being in the forest among the trees, finding little things that are going on alongside your daily activities that maybe you don't notice normally, but it's happening, right? There's actually like a bird's nest, near the house where I'm sitting right now. Just being more aware and open to noticing those things. It's a aspect of gratitude, and it shifts things. It's not it's not a cure all for the rest of life, but it's really helpful.
And it takes you, when you look to nature for that gratitude, I think it takes you out of your life, your perspective for a minute or, just gives you like a broader perspective. And so I think I would recommend that people include that in their gratitude list. Of course, we're grateful for the people in our lives, but it's all in relation to us. And so, in your list, find something that's outside of you, your family, that's just permanent.
I found that it's a way better way to start the day to just immediately go outside than to like sit and scroll on my phone. I have so much more energy instantly. I just feel, that difference. And I really just started picking that up in the last few months. But now I can't imagine not doing that. And looking back at kind of like I need a coffee immediately. And, I'm just like already overwhelmed because of the things I've just seen on social media. I felt way more groggy and just kind of instantly overwhelmed. And now, I just keep my phone on the nightstand, turn off my alarm, get up, get dressed, and walk outside. And no matter what the weather is, like it will be raining and I will still just go, take a little walk around my circle in my neighborhood. So I found personally that is a huge change, and a huge impact and in a positive way. So I would 100% echo all of what was said. Nature is so important and so helpful to our mental health. So
Mm-hmm.
It is.
Yeah.
And so many times when we're in nature, we're also doing other things that are good for our mental health, like breathing more deeply, like, just moving our bodies has changes for our nervous system.
yeah.
So getting outside, even just for a few minutes, I think is really fundamental. It's super, super helpful, almost no matter where you are. If you can just get outside, breathe in deeply and walk a little bit, it's a great strategy. And the other thing you mentioned, Carrie, that I think we tend to overlook is just the impact of our phones and devices on how our energy level for the day.
Yes.
We have so many sources of information coming in all the time, and it takes a lot of energy to process all of that.
Yep.
And so for our community, being really intentional about managing our energy is really important. And that's a really great way that we can manage our energy, is just to be aware of how often are we connected, how quickly in the morning are we looking at our phone. They had a great article come out a number of years ago. I think it was the Harvard Business Review, in the business sector, called Manage Your Energy, Don't Manage Your Time, Manage Your Energy, or Manage Your Energy, Not Your Time. Because they've found that you get more done and you're more effective when you manage your energy as opposed to just managing the time in the day.
So important. It's like fundamental as humans that we just do that, I think.
Yeah, and we're going
To
to
be
have
able
to
to
learn
have
more and more, right?
productive days. Yeah, to be
Yeah.
just productive people, to be people in general, just to feel human.
Yeah, it's funny how with our devices, we're just now in a situation where it's not optional to learn these skills anymore. It's like we have to.
Right. Yes. Yes. It's so important to continue to be advanced in, the technology and be current on what's going on in the world and current on, how to use a phone and things like that, but also finding that balance of disconnecting and finding your center and just feeling happiness for yourself too. I think it's a very delicate balance. Mm-hmm.
That it's not really anymore about just managing our time, because all of our time is completely filled up. It's more about learning about ourselves energetically so that we can put our energy to the places where it's most needed, and for people in this community, we need a lot of energy to do our caregiving. I mean, it's not something that's going to be done well when we're completely overloaded. If we know enough about ourselves to know how to keep that energy level high, we can really do amazing things. And when we're at a low time, there's a lot that can be gained also. I've learned that too through my own journey. There's a lot of benefits from times when I've gotten burned out. I've learned so much about myself, and I've learned how to get new skills that I didn't have before. So you need something, you don't really explore it, right?
Right.
So, Emily, what is something that you've done today or that you're going to do today to take care of yourself?
Well, I've been taking pretty good care of myself for the past 2 months. I go through cycles. I talk about caregiving. I talk about self-care. That doesn't mean that I also am not up and down constantly with these exact same issues, because I am. But I'm also on a journey of trying to get better and trying to learn. And so when I broke my knee in May, I wasn't able to exercise for about 3 months, and it took a toll on my mental health. I really felt the difference between not getting to go outside and walk, not having movement in my life. So for the past couple of months, I've been starting out my mornings with stretching and like a very brief yoga routine. I was definitely a yoga practitioner before breaking my knee, and I can't do as much as I could, but I start out with about 15 to 20 minutes of stretching yoga in the morning, and then a brief quiet time kind of meditation, maybe 10 minutes. And then I get out and walk the dog. And then after that, I start my day, get my work done. I found what's been really helpful for me is the routine. I often struggle to have a set routine in my life. Like I meditate, I do all the things, but I sometimes do them sporadically, or I don't do them at the same time each day. And I realized that for myself, starting off my day with these things, like my own needs first, it gives me more energy for the rest of the day. And then if I come through the day feeling better, I'm like happier at the end of the day with myself, and I feel more satisfied. Like, oh, okay, I've got a tiny bit under control. So I did that this morning. I got up, I put on some classical music, I did my stretching routine, brief meditation, and then launched into responding to text messages from my son and trying to record a Loom video for him to figure out something in Google Slides. And then I was off. But from now on, I know I did what I wanted to for me in the day. I know I got that out of the way. And when it stops working, I have to explore and see what changes need to be made so I can keep showing up for myself.
That's wonderful. Yeah. You just have to, again, find what works in your schedule and where you're at emotionally, mentally, physically at the time.
I really love my routine, but I mean, full transparency, I will say I've been getting coached by a coach for the past couple of years. My coach does have a child with PWS and is a wonderful mentor and person for me. And she has encouraged me and helped supported me along the way to figure out how to start doing these things for myself. So it's been through working with her as well that I've been able to make some changes and continue to improve my own care for myself, and also to start believing that I'm worthy of those things, because we try to implement self-care, but we immediately bump into conflicts because we feel like we're not worth it, or other people don't want to step in and help, or they can't. People get pushback. It's not like self-care is that easy because we get pushback from the external world. And if you want to really go the whole journey with self-care, it's like really about confronting that pushback, caring for yourself a lot, and believing that you deserve to go through this journey in a healthy state. You deserve to live your life and fully in the different moments you have, and not be constantly overwhelmed or totally exhausted.
Mm-hmm.
Many of us spend years being totally exhausted. And then suddenly we realize, oh my gosh, I'm totally exhausted. What am I going to do now? Hey, I don't want to live like this. I need help.
And yeah, you finding energy through, again, nature or smoothie or, anything that gives you that boost that you can consistently add and make a habit out of it to continue to not feel exhausted. So well said. What about you, Annie? What are you going to do? Or what have you done?
Well, I woke up at 5 and I
You're our
It's
early
amazing.
riser.
Amazing.
I
I don't know
didn't
what that's
want
like.
to, but no, I woke up at 5 and I got on the treadmill because I now have a standing desk at the treadmill. And I did an hour of work because there was something I wanted to get out this morning. And I did an hour of walking like while I did it. So that was cool. And then I did my workout and then I had a good breakfast all before the girls got up. So, Emily, like you were saying, yeah, I did what I needed to do for me to start the day. It didn't include any writing time, which I'm trying to I'm trying to find that balance of, because for me, both are so crucial for my health, my writing and exercising. But I went to poetry the other night. We have a once a month poetry night and I don't miss it because it's this collective, beautiful experience. And we were oming to a cello at one point. And so like, that's something that I know like every month, like that's what I'm going to do. And my kids are old enough now that they can be home for a couple hours. So it makes it easier. When they were younger, it was harder. So I did see something on Instagram the other day, these parents of these young kids, and they were posting this video and it was just saying things like, this is not my time to be going out to the clubs. This is not my time where I go to the movies when I want, or, just going through all this list. And they were like, and that's okay. This is my time to be at home with my kids. And so I think also that is an important thing to remember too, that life comes in phases and that sometimes,
Seasons, right?
yeah, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah, keeping things in perspective. And I think we do keep things in perspective if we can keep above water and stay in a place where we can just have a perspective on things.
mhm. I mean, also 2 days ago, I was really angry and resentful, and thinking, I want to go traveling. When's my chance to go traveling again? Because it's been too long. So
Yeah.
it comes and goes.
Yeah, it's a delicate balance. And that's why it's so important to say there's not like one magic pill or one size fits all, because it looks different for between families and also between for us from one year to the next. I mean,
Hmm.
I've sometimes felt that frustration too around my own projects, saying, okay, I've been doing this for 12 years. Like, when do I get to focus on my writing? When do I get to focus on, something else I really want to do? And there's seasons for things. And at the same time, sometimes the time is now to do something that we want to do. Like, we had to make that decision, to and find a balance between things that we're enjoying now for us versus what are we giving to others, because we give most of our energy, I think, to other people, our
Hmm.
kids, and also other people in our lives too.
Balance is the key word.
There's some obstacles that sometimes come up when you try to take care of yourself, and when you talk to others, you see that we all sometimes face the same things. We want to take care of ourselves, but maybe we feel guilty, like, if we do too much for ourselves, it's selfish, for example. A lot of people feel that. Or I've heard many people say, and I've felt this too sometimes, oh, I'm not going to apply for that support, or, this different source of support, because all parents have challenges and we do too, but we're just taking care of our kids like any other parent. My coach helped me see this in a different light and recognize that, yeah, we have sometimes harder stuff to deal with. That's totally okay. We do what we have to do, but it's okay to need more support, and it's okay to get more help, and it's okay to be eligible for things and try to get the max too. That's a way of showing up for ourselves and for our kids. Yeah. And just sometimes we try to ask others for support, but there's like this feeling inside saying, like, I know I'm going to do it right, and they're probably not going to do it well, or they're going to mess it up, or maybe they forgot the dose of this or that. Well, sometimes other people do it their way, it doesn't always have to be our way. I think that if we reach the point where we just really, we need to let others step in and help us, even if it looks like they may do things differently than we do. That's part of life. And at some level, if we want support and if we want to take care of ourselves, we have to accept that everyone has their way. And, I always feel like my way is better, but it may not be. And even if it is, maybe it's okay if it doesn't get carried out according to my plan all the time or some of the time. So it's just also about being flexible. I think those are the type of things that I'd like to share with people, because it's very easy to say, oh yeah, I'm going to take better care of myself. But the reason we don't do it is because there are obstacles that pop up when we try. And we have to meet those obstacles and deal with them and get through them and over them. And then on the other side, we finally go, oh, yay, I'm finally able to have a yoga practice. Wow. I would really recommend to lean on the PWS community. PWSA is just such a supportive organization. And I've often found myself just feeling like I need to deal with things on my own, and just forgetting that if I just tell another parent in the community what I'm going through, some interesting idea is going to come out of that. Right.
Mm-hmm.
Or our family support team can hop on any, calls.
Exactly.
To answer any questions or to be an additional voice in meetings if you have them. I think that's a great point, Emily, that, please lean on us. We are here to support the community, to support caregivers, and to try to offer, some additional respite anywhere that we can as well. So our team is here to help.
Yes, I've made quite a bit of use of it, I have to say.
I'm glad.
Yeah, I've had
That's
letters
wonderful.
written. I've had people be present in our REP meetings. I've had all kinds of different supports. And I've even had people that just also reached out to me when they hadn't heard from me in a while to say, hey, how did that thing end up? Or how are you doing? And I've really, really appreciated that about this community.
I'm so glad.
I'm grateful. I have a lot of gratitude for that, Annie.
Your gratitude for the day.
Yeah, I could put that on my list almost every day.
Almost every day. Oh,
Thank you, Emily. Really appreciate you coming on and talking with us. I always love talking with you, whether it's on a screen or by campfire. I'm grateful for our friendship.
I'm grateful. I'm grateful for you too, both of you. And thank you for having me on and for letting me share my story. And hopefully it's helpful to others who are likely facing the same kind of thing.
thank you for listening to this episode of PWS United. If you want to learn more about Prader-Willi syndrome and how PWSA USA is making strides in advocacy, family support, and research, visit www.pwsausa.org. And while you're there, we encourage you to sign up for our Pulse email newsletter to stay informed about the latest news, resources, and events. Don't forget to subscribe to the PWS United podcast so you never miss an episode. Our team is always available to support families and their loved ones living with PWS 24 hours a day, 365 days a year. You can call us at 941-312-0400 or email info@pwsausa.org. Catch a new episode next Tuesday, and until then, have a great week.